Hello everyone. Welcome to another Kerbal Space Program video by yours truly. I wanted to recreate the Peregrine-1 moon landing mission that was recently attempted by the company Astrobotic, which is based in Pittsburgh. Um, I wanted to recreate this because, I live in Pittsburgh and it's really cool to have that area connection to the United States returning to the moon for the first time in over 50 years. So, um, another thing that makes this launch pretty neat is that it is the first use of the Vulcan Centaur rocket, which is a two-stage to orbit rocket with a liquid methane oxidizer first stage and a liquid hydrogen oxidizer second stage. Um, The mission was launched the morning of January 8th. The launch itself was successful, but unfortunately for the lander, there was a propellant leakage issue and it did not have enough fuel to reach the moon. Regardless of how it turned out, it still represents a success for an American company to be able to do something like that. So I enjoyed recreating it. So let's get to it. All right, let me get rid of this clutter here. Okay, now the game plan of this mission is basically to launch from Earth out into lunar orbit. Um, Out in lunar orbit, there's going to be some adjustments made, and we're going to circle back towards Earth. Once we swing back towards Earth, the moon will be in a position for us to make a couple little more adjustment burns to our orbit and then be able to capture into the moon's sphere of influence. Now, because we're not going straight to the moon at launch, we're going to have to be able to time it out so we're able to perform an insertion burn on our way back around the second time. Now, the way to do that within KSP here is you'll notice if you look at the moon or MUN, it has a rotational period of about 25 days. It takes about 8 to 10 days to get to lunar orbit and back. So you can kind of guess that it's about two-thirds of a rotation. I'm sure the folks at Astrobotic and ULA, um, you know, they calculated this out pretty exact, but I'm just going to eyeball it because, I'm just a goon playing a video game and not an astrophysicist. Okay, so after we get the moon in position, what we want to do now is we want to make sure that our launch site is in the right position so we can launch straight to lunar orbit. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to take the Kerbal Space Center and we're going to fast forward a little bit to where we are just before sunrise. Alright, now let's go take a look at our vehicles. Here we are with the lander itself. Obviously it doesn't look exactly like Astrobotic's lander, but this is a video game, so it's my recreation. Um, I have the 5 propulsion engines down at the bottom. Um, I decided to add more solar panels on there because, I can't keep the craft orientated towards the sun at all times like the engineers at Astrobotic can. So, also I have a small science payload on the front, uh, some nice gold fuel tanks. One thing I thought was pretty cool about the design of the lander itself is the way the RCS attitude thrusters are arranged. I like how there's 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top in perpendicular fashion to each other. I think that's kind of neat. And those pretty gold legs and that nice boxy shape. Now let's look at what's going to haul that sucker to the moon. So here's my version of the Vulcan Centaur. I do have liquid methane and oxidizer fuel in this game as part of a mod, but unfortunately the engines that I have to go with them, when you try to use them in a twin configuration like what's used on the Vulcan, I get a weird bug with torque and it causes the rocket to wobble back and forth, so I had to go with just stock fuel and engines on the lower stage of this, but it gets the job done. I also have some SRBs on there, just like, you know, the regular Vulcan, but they're a little bit bigger. But what are you going to do? The Centaur stage is pretty cool though, because I was actually able to use liquid hydrogen and oxidizer fuel with matching engines in a dual configuration, like the actual Centaur. So it seems like it's pretty true to life to that, and that sucker definitely will definitely get you to where you need to go. Just got to do a quick check of the staging as always, because, if you don't do that, you could have some problems later on down the line. Now let's get this thing out to the launch pad and get to the moon. Alright, so here we are on the launch pad. Nice, beautiful morning. Not really much left to do, but let her rip. Launch looks good. Now, generally you'd want to start a gravity turn right now if you were going into orbit, but since we're going straight for lunar orbit, we're going to stay pretty vertical for a while. Plus, with how short this rocket is and the way aerodynamics and stuff are modeled in this game, uh, you can flip around a lot and stuff if your rocket's too stubby. So we're going to play it safe with this. Pitch it about 5 degrees before we let go of these SRBs. Um, you notice I don't have a very high thrust to weight ratio, but that's okay because we just need to chug through the lower part of the atmosphere here. This isn't a race. So we let the SRBs go, and basically we're just going to burn prograde and adjust our pitch until we get to about 45 degrees. Just got to keep burning. See, now I noticed that my inclination's off a little bit, and um, now I'm going to sit here and do my best to try to get me back onto an equatorial inclination. The more uh, further from zero that my inclination is, the more correction I'm going to have to do in order to get to the moon. And the more correction I have to do with the lander, the less fuel I have to land. So I want to have to do as less correction as possible. There we go. Looks like we're getting her back down. This rocket is not the most stable thing in the world. Now that we're about to drop the first stage, I want to hang around at this 45-degree mark, but as you can see, I'm flopping around quite a bit from the corrections I was making before. But that's okay, because I'm about to drop this stage. Okay, here's our main engine cutoff, first stage separation, and Centaur ignition. We're gonna let the fairing go. And now we're gonna burn at 45 degrees for a little bit, and then we'll set it to prograde, and that'll take us all the way to lunar orbit. Just a little bit more, there we go. Okay, so now that we have our apogee in lunar orbit, we can release our lander. Now I'm gonna do a little clerical stuff. Can't have this thing named a probe. It's a lander, come on. Silly game. Anyways, do a quick check out of the RCS. Everything looks good. Set it to prograde. Fire up the engines. I think we're good to go. Off to the moon. So now we're going to warp out to our apogee because if you notice we have no perigee, and that means when we come back around we will hit the atmosphere and burn up, and that will be no fun. If you're wondering what those green lines are, that's my satellite network for communication. You know, got to be able to control this thing, right? Anyways, let's get rid of that so we can see. All right, now we're going to adjust our maneuver node so we can give ourselves a periapsis. There we go. Um, we'll go ahead and that looks good. Yeah, that looks good. We're going to go ahead and use the maneuver planner to execute that. All right, we have a perigee that'll keep us from burning up. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back down towards Earth. As we come back down towards the Earth, we want to set the moon as our target. That way on our trajectory lines, we get these little indicator markings that tell us what our separation will be at our position in orbit. And that'll tell us how to make our maneuver node at our periapsis in order to get ourselves into a position to capture. So when I eyeballed the timing of the moon, I could have done it a little bit better, as you can see, as I'm adjusting this maneuver node, but that's okay. Um, we'll get there. We'll just have to do a couple little correction burns. As you can see with this maneuver, I've got myself an intercept. Look how pretty the Earth looks. Well, Kerbin, you know. I'm going to mess around with the maneuver node here for a sec. I want to get as close as I can get to around 40 kilometers. I like to be around 35 to 40 kilometers when I'm trying to land on a moon. It gives me enough height to slow down if I have a low thrust to weight ratio and stuff like that. All right, it looks like we have something suitable. We'll go ahead and execute that. Sometimes this game is just beautiful. Now that burn was not as accurate as I would like it to be, and you can see it moving a lot, and that is because of the RCS. We are really far out from the gravitational pull of Earth, so a little bit of thrust makes a lot of difference. So what I'm trying to do now is reorient the craft so I can just use its RCS to get me back down to a 40 kilometer periapsis. So I need to turn it around, which is what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to go ahead and there we go. And as you can see, as I mess around with the RCS, I'm getting it back down to about 40, little under 40. That's about where I want it. So we're ready to go. Those weird noises you hear, I have a mod called Chatterer, and it plays different space noises and stuff like that, and that's the noise I get when I lose communication, so yep. I guess I could have muted it, but what are you going to do? And here we are, our arrival at the moon. I feel like I should be playing Dark Side of the Moon. I believe in the original Peregrine mission plan, they were going to burn several different times at the periapsis of the moon to eventually circularize the orbit. But I'm just going to do it all in one go. All right, here we are in orbit around the moon. This is where the fun begins. Now we got to find ourselves a place to land. Before that, we got to make sure we're going to have enough comms to land. Now, that polar relay satellite there is going to be my boy. I'm going to have to orbit once or twice in order to get just once there. That way, he'll be above me the whole time. I'm liking that crater right there. So let's take a look at it with our altimetry data. Now, I don't like to use autopilot to land, but I do use it to get me into the vicinity. As you can see, I can use a target with my altimetry information. It gives me the slope of the ground, which, you know, if you're going to land, you want you don't want much of a slope. So I use the landing guidance to get me in the ballpark, and then I hand fly it in. Ooh, that was a good one. Did you see that? That was like 0.0. All right, now that we got that all keyed up, let's just let her rip. And what it's going to do is give me a little bit of a plane change in order to line me up with that crater. It's another reason why I use the landing guidance because, you know, I'm not a smart guy like, you know, the folks at NASA and SpaceX and Astrobotic who can figure this stuff out. Orbital trajectories and all that other good stuff. I just like to play video games. Anyways, these spacecrafts control themselves, right? I mean, those really smart people do program them. Anyways, now we got to do our deorbit burn. That's going to get us in our landing trajectory, and then I will shut off auto land and hand fly us in. All right. Now that I got my landing trajectory, I'm going to shut off auto land and get myself lined up retrograde. Figure out my orientation here in case I need to do a little correction. Now, as I'm coming down in, you'll notice I have my windows open on the left there, my flight engineer and the landing info window, and both of them list suicide burn countdowns. You'll notice there is a discrepancy between them. I believe the one of the mods accounts for the loss of mass as you burn fuel. I don't think the other one does. Um, what I do a lot of times is sometimes I split the difference and I hit my burn, or I'll usually start with the one all the way on the left with the green text because that one gives me the biggest margin of error. But I think we'll be okay. All right, here we go. I'll probably do this landing in at least 2 or 3 burns. Once to get me down to a nice slow descent speed, and then another to land. Possibly another to correct if the landing zone's all crappy. Alright, now that I'm below 50 here, I'm going to let her cruise down a little bit. My thrust to weight ratio is 4.5, so it's not going to be too bad. Looks like the landing zone is a little icky. I'm going to try to correct here a little bit. Get me over there to the right. Alright. Alright, here we go. This is do or die. Gotta bring that throttle down just a little. Ooh, a little bit of a hard landing, but not too bad. Not too bad at all. There she is. Peregrine-1X landed in a crater on the Mun in Kerbal Space Program. Astrobotic's next mission is going to be the Griffin mission, which is going to take place later on this year in 2024, where they're going to launch a little bit of a larger lander with a rover on it to the south pole of the moon. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that, and I think I might try to recreate that one too, because I like the design of that lander. I think it's pretty neat, and I think it'd be fun to try to build. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff, because I definitely enjoy making these KSP videos.